And joining me now here in the studio is Dania Thafer, the Executive Director of the Gulf International Forum. And in our studio in Washington, D.C., we've got Adam Clements, a U.S. foreign policy analyst, and he's also a former Pentagon official. Thank you to the both of you for joining us here on the program. Dania, let me start with you. In the last few minutes, we actually heard from Iran's Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi. He's saying that the talks and messages with the U.S. are ongoing and that we really shouldn't judge things until we actually see the result of things. But who holds the cards at this point? Who's got the best leverage, the U.S. or Iran?
That's a good question. And I would agree with him. We actually can't come to any conclusion until we actually see the deal sealed publicly. It depends on what you emphasize on more. For example, right now, in the last couple of days, the Trump administration and Trump foresee more positive outlook from their perspective. With the upcoming midterm elections, the Supreme Court ruling allowing redistricting that could be favorable to the Republicans in the midterms is something looked at positively. The slight decrease in gas prices is a selling point. And also the fact that the Trump administration was able to sanction, I think, up to $1 billion worth of cryptocurrency, a method in which the Iranians tried to bypass U.S. sanctions. So they feel like they have enough pressure on Iran, whereas Iran sees itself that it can withstand and have a higher degree of pain, economically speaking, because it's been sanctioned for decades now, and this is not something new, although their economy is reeling. And so they also think that the international economy card is going to be their strongest card. Neither party has blinked, and we have to see where it goes with the negotiation.
Right. Adam, the U.S. has basically crippled the Iranian economy at this point. Donald Trump says he has blown the Iranian Navy to pieces. They're at the bottom of the sea. They have no air force left. Yet Iran is not giving up. Do you think that there's been too much focus on these kind of military threats, threatening of bombing Iran back to the Stone Age, when you haven't actually yielded any kind of real result yet?
Thank you for having me. I think you're right to note the limits of military power. I think there have been many analysts that have examined perhaps the U.S.'s overuse of military power over the past decades. And here is quite a blatant example of the limits of military power, and specifically the limits of an exclusive air campaign. And so I think you're right to notice some of the limits here. And what's lacking here, I think, for the U.S. has been what it's traditionally done, is using international partners and allies to bring about core policy changes, or to try to drive some of these policies or political ends, or political goals, rather, and then using tools, using economic tools, military tools, to try as a means to bring about these ends. And so I think that's one thing is still lacking, that I think that I've been still surprised of the U.S. I guess I shouldn't be surprised given the style of the administration, but they're still lacking an international part of trying to bring together partners and allies to try to develop a solution. And I think that what you're noting here is, even if there's a 60-day ceasefire, then in the long term, how do you get leverage? How does each side try to position itself to obtain leverage? And if for the U.S., getting even China, Russia, the P5+1 that occurred in the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action over 10 years ago, that was the key aspect here of getting partners and allies. I don't see that yet. And so that's a key ingredient, and typically a tool that the U.S. has used, and it's not being used here. So I think that's what we need to watch. Is the U.S. still continue to go along, or can it bring other partners here? I think there are elements of European partners and allies that once there's some type of agreement in place, they may be ready to help from a military aspect to help secure freedom of navigation. So these are all things I think we should really continue to watch closely as compared to previous action from the U.S.
Yeah, bringing those allies closer. Dania, of course, some of those allies are the Gulf states. But now that Iran insists on maintaining control of the Strait of Hormuz, they've set up this Persian Gulf Strait Authority. Those Gulf countries can no longer rely on this sort of automatic equilibrium of knowing that they can always use the Strait of Hormuz to export their goods. How is all this going to impact their economic model when things have clearly changed on the ground?
It's important to note that from the Gulf states' perspectives, having strong international norms and international law and a global governance structure that allows smaller states to be able to achieve their rights through these institutions and mechanisms. And the problem is President Trump has been in some ways undermining international law, whether it be the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization. And in some ways, it undermined the application of international law when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, because now we're not talking about applying international law equally in all areas. And so he kind of undermined the whole rule-based order that was something much more emphasized on under the Biden administration. The Biden administration also undermined it in some ways, but held it to a higher regard than the Trump administration. And this has made the Gulf states very susceptible and vulnerable because coercion is going to be the currency moving forward. And we're seeing that with the Strait of Hormuz and the behavior of Iran when it comes to the freedom of navigation.
Adam, do you agree with that the U.S. has a responsibility here for, as Dania says, undermining the international rules-based order, international law, by getting us into this situation where it's no longer free passage that is the way things are done in the Strait of Hormuz?
I do think the U.S. certainly has a responsibility here, and I think that's part of the frustration that you'd see in Gulf states, and maybe not their public engagement with the U.S., but probably privately and through third-party interlocutors of their frustration. The U.S., of course, since the end of the Second World War, has helped build these institutions and help support for many decades the free flow of oil and commerce through international waterways. And so I do think, regardless of what happens here, even towards the end of from now until the end of the Trump administration, I don't have any doubt that the next administration, whatever it is, Republican or Democrat, would see that the free flow of commerce is a very strong and vital strategic interest of the United States, not only here, but you definitely have to look at the Malacca Straits of other strategic waterways throughout the world. So I think that is really important here of how we contextualize. It's not just the Strait of Hormuz, it's other international precedent that we're setting here. And I think that's also a little bit of what Dania touched on.
Adam Clements, a U.S. foreign policy analyst. Thank you so much, Adam. And also thank you, Dania Thafer, the executive director of the Gulf International Forum.
Thank you.